Erev Tov. We'd like to thank Leah and Dr. Shai Sefen for sponsoring this short Dvar Torah. It's the Ilui Nishmat Leah's mother, Shendel Bat Yaakov, Zichronah Livracha, that she should have an Aliyah Began Eden, amongst other things, in the schut of the sponsoring of the Dvar Torah. We learn in this dramatic, all Parshiot are dramatic, but here we learn in Parshat Bo the preparations of Am Yisrael before leaving Egypt. And the Torah says in the beginning that they had to bring a Korban Pesach. Rashi says that they had to purchase the Korban Pesach 4 days before the time of slaughtering it. They had to purchase it on the 10th of Nisan. They were going to only slaughter it on the 14th of Nisan. And the reason that it had to be, they had to purchase it already 4 days before, was to give them a chance in order to check the Korban, whether there was any blemishes or not. So the 4 days were a period of scrutiny, of being involved in the mitzvah, to see that everything was okay with the Korban, and then finally to shecht it on the 14th of Nisan. The Gemara Masechet Pesachim says that this law about checking for 4 days, it applied only to the generation. In other words, 4 days for Korban Pesach applied only to the generation of Yetziat Mitzrayim. Later generations who brought the Korban Pesach didn't need 4 days, but a daily sacrifice, which was sacrificed not by everyone, each individual person, but the Korban Tamid, which was brought on a daily basis in the Beit HaMikdash, that also needed 4 days. It's interesting to note also that this halacha, that we need 4 days to check the Korban Pesach before bringing it, is a basis for other Ashkenazi custom that we recite the slichot at least no less than 4 days before Rosh Hashanah. And the reason is that concerning the Korban of Rosh Hashanah, it says that V'asitem ola reach nichuach. It says that the language of the pasuk is that you should make instead of that you should sacrifice. And the drasha, or the idea, is that when it says you have to make the korban, it's referring to making oneself as a korban. One has to take at least 4 days to begin to scrutinize oneself more intensely before appearing before Hashem on Rosh Hashanah. But having said all that, the Tam Badat says a very interesting inyan, and that is that really, and he's actually bases himself on Rashi, that we don't need 4 days in order to scrutinize and to check an animal whether there's going to be whether there is a blemish or it's going to be a blemish. It's enough to check a day before. So Rashi says, why in fact were that generation coming out of Mitzrayim? Why were they given 4 days? Why did Hashem instruct them to purchase the Korban 4 days before and to start to check and to examine for blemishes? Rashi says because that generation, they had no zchuyot. We all know they had no merits. They were very, very assimilated type of Jews. Of course, we know of the very famous midrashim that says that the Jewish people didn't change their language, they didn't change their names, they didn't change their clothing, etc. But all those, when you think of it, the Beit Yeshai says that these zchuyot are zchuyot which are passive zchuyot. It's not that something that they did, it's something that they didn't do. In other words, they didn't change their names, they just held on to their names. We're looking for zchuyot, we're looking for active type of zchuyot, something that they did do. And therefore Rashi says that in order for the Jewish people to experience a miracle, the miracle which is of the dimension of Yetziat Mitzrayim, so one has to go do all things which are extra. You need an extra dimension of Mesirut Nefesh and schuyot and merits in order to deserve such a type of miracle. So therefore, for the 4 days, Hashem told them, so says Rashi on Pasuk Vav, that the Jewish people were given this chance to busy themselves with the Korban Pesach in an active way. Of course, it was active also in that there was a dimension of danger, because the Egyptians said, "What are you doing? Why are you taking a sheep? The sheep's are God," and they would explain to them. So this was an active involvement in the mitzvah. And from here, the Talmud says that we learn this great principle, the principle of chivuv mitzvah, of loving and being and passionately being involved in a mitzvah, not just to do the mitzvah, but to love the mitzvah. To do the mitzvah, in that case of Korban Pesach, to give a Korban Pesach which was without a blemish, it's enough to check it a day before, as we said. But when the 4 days, the 4 days is in order to express our love and our busyness and involvement with the mitzvah, our infatuation almost, and love for the mitzvah. And that's why we don't want to only spend 1 day on the mitzvah. We want to spend 4 days on the mitzvah. That's what, in fact, Rashi was saying. And, I was thinking that maybe that's also that very idea of the Jews loving the mitzvot, which was the basis of our first time doing a mitzvah as a community, as a nation in Mitzrayim, is the basis of what the Gemara says also in Rosh Hashanah. We said before that we learn the slichot from the inyan of Korban Pesach, but the Gemara also there says, why do we repeat the blowing of the shofar twice? We do it in 2 sets. Once before we return the Torah, and one after we return the Torah. And the Gemara says, in order again that it causes to confuse the Satan, and Tosfot over there says that the Satan becomes, we shut up his accusations, because when he sees how the Jewish people are attached to the mitzvah, they're not prepared to do the mitzvah only once. They do the mitzvah twice. That shows that they're not doing it just in order to fulfill the basic obligations. They're doing it because they're enamored with the mitzvot. So then when the Satan sees how the Jewish people are enamored with the mitzvot, so how's he going to accuse the Jewish people? And we conclude that actually Rashi at the end of towards the end of the Parsha, it says that the Jewish people took the matzot, bound up misharotam al shichman, that they had bound up the matzot, the remains of the matzot, and they put it on their shoulders, and they walked, as they emerged out of Egypt. Rashi says this is again an expression of the principle of loving mitzvot. Rashi says, quoting Midrashim, they had animals, they had wagons, they could have put the dough and the rest of the remains of the matzah that they had as part of the Korban Pesach. They could have loaded it onto the animals, but because these leftovers of the matzah, you must remember, when they slaughtered the animal, the Korban Pesach, took of the blood, dashed it onto the mezuzot of their house. Then that they did was they burnt the meat. They ate the meat. They ate the meat together with matzah and maror. So even before they went out, as part of the eating the Korban Pesach, which was supposed to be roasted, so they ate matzah together with the roasted Paschal lamb. So the remains of that Su'udat mitzvah, the remains of that Pesach, together with the other unleavened bread, which didn't manage to rise, that they took on their shoulders, and they walked out of, they checked out of Mitzrayim. So Rashi is saying that because they were so enamored with the mitzvah, they wanted to makabe, they wanted to hold on to it. They wanted it on their bodies, on their shoulders. They didn't want it just on their animals. So we see already in two places, we could call that the beginning and the end. The beginning of the description of their being involved in the Korban Pesach. Right? There we had an expression of checking for 4 days to show the love of the mitzvah. And then the end of that process, when they already slaughtered it and accompanied that their slaughtering and roasting and eating, that they had to eat it together with matzah. So the remainder of it then again expressed this love of the mitzvah, and that they carried it on their shoulders. So this is Be'emet, one of the great zchuyot of the Jewish people, to see how the Jewish people are so happy in doing the mitzvot. We look now at so many clips. It's just beyond belief. It's beyond words. Of our dear Chayalim, our heroes, the Chayalim who are in Gaza, who are on the border of Lebanon. And we see in these clips the way they dance, the way they sing, the way they learn, the way that they lit Chanukah candles, the way that they do Kabbalat Shabbat, the way that they do brachot, the way that they let it tefillin, and with such simcha, and with the way they broadcast and they project the simcha. This is the great zchuyot of the Jewish people. Shabbat shalom lekulam.